Let's get the ship in the air again, filled with hopium. Welcome back, episode 2. Mr. Lazarus and Mr. Jesse.
Hello, Dan.
It's been a while since we were in the air last time. The world and life has got in the way, but here we are again, and we're doing the CBD special this time. Doing a bit more of a deep dive in the CBDs into central bank digital currencies. Probably pretty important. I think one of the most important bits of Bitcoin and why it is so important, because we are actually in a debt spiral, and the global economic system is in a debt spiral, and I can't really see a way out. Can you guys, apart from a CBDC?
Yeah, but it's not a pretty picture.
No, it's not. It's terrible.
The CBDC is the way they can pretend that they're holding the ship together by, and you could argue that World War II was taken advantage of to bring the US dollar into the world stage. They used that crisis. They created new institutions that didn't exist after it to govern the issuance of that dollar as the head. And they could do that again, you know. And if the war itself isn't bad enough to cause for them to do what they want to do, I wouldn't put it past them to make the war bigger than it already is. They're profiting from the war as already. They're making huge amounts of money out of Ukraine, and they can escalate that. One could argue they're trying to escalate it. They have been trying ever since. Even in the fact that they're not trying to de-escalate it. Right? They're definitely keeping it going. And if they make that worse because they'd rather that than, you know, either admit defeat,
default,
military defeat or financial defeat to a currency that's beating them, who knows what they'd bring upon us to justify more extreme measures. So that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, is there a way out? Definitely not. It's like if it's not an if, it's a when, and it's you know, I think if you were in the 70s, you would have given it a couple of years, you know, when we went off the gold standard, and you'd be like, oh, this fiat currency thing is dead, you know, you would have said maybe 1975, it'll be dead. And now it's 2023 and we're still here, you know, saying the same thing. So it's how long have we got? And it could be a long time, you know, this thing could run. And the next step in maintaining this, you know, there's been many steps, but the next step is probably a CBDC where you can hide the debt and issue debt freely.
Yeah, how would that look? Would they admit a default and kind of eradicate a lot of debt and reset things? How do they normally do a reset of a currency?
No, I think it's based on people not understanding what's going on. It's based on complexity, and it's based on making sure that the public don't actually understand what is really going on. It's like fractional reserve banking. Like people use banks all the time and have no idea how fractional reserve banking works. And I feel like that is necessary to keep the charade going. So it won't be as simple as, oh, we're defaulting. It's the same as QE. Like, it's money printing with a different label, and on all these other things, it's like layers of complexity to hide what is actually really going on. So
complexity is key to how they get away with what they've done so far. The entire financial system, from, you know, above governments through the Bank of International Settlements, but even through the financial sector, it is so complex. You literally need to do your entire career can be just in credit default swaps, or just in, you know, futures, just in, you know, you really need to devote your entire time just to be able to explain one little fraction of it. And, you know, a lot of the complexity thus far has come from the fact that we have operated in a world with, you know, 200 odd currencies trying to compete for a world stage at the beck and call of the big dog, the US dollar, since World War II. Yet that complexity only confuses everything. Why do we're all humans. We all need the same toilet paper. We all eat the same food. Mm-hmm. Why are we using a different language to communicate value from country to country? Yeah. None of that makes sense. Yet if this whole default comes into play, and the only way they see out of it is to issue a digital currency, not only one though, a range of digital currencies. You're adding to the existing pool of currencies with potentially at least double as many. Every country out there is going to go, oh, well, I'm going to do that too. So now instead of having 200, we're going to have 400 currencies all arguing and bartering over each other.
Now, what about the concept of a WEF coin or something like that? Like the central bank digital currency to rule them all, one that is global and operates above all of them. Is that something? Maybe like a BRICS currency or something. Do you think that's a possibility?
It's possible, like anything's possible, but man, the amount of collaboration and like the example of free trade agreements that would have to be negotiated. I just don't have faith in governments. Like, they're useless as it is.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
to be able to negotiate something as complex as that, and then how much WEF coin do we get? How much WEF coin
Yeah.
do you get? And then what's, we all have to agree on an inflation rate if that's what we're going to do. And
Is it backed by a basket of other commodities
Yeah.
or something?
Exactly.
I don't
and
think it's
who gets to
complexity.
control that? I mean,
Exactly,
that's the
like-
one thing that we've got on our favor is that even if they do garner control, they're still going to want to play winners and losers. And if they've got a border to where their business goes, if they've got a limit to who they're going to allow to play, that's where Bitcoin will thrive at the edges, because it has no limits. No one
Yeah.
can tell anyone who can or can't use Bitcoin. So
also, WEF coin would probably be environmentally sensible. Obviously it's not a reasonable thing to try to run a blockchain on proof of stake, but that's what they would do because it's in vogue to bash energy usage. So it would eventually break as well, which would be hilarious.
Yeah, we're just the whole world is just absolutely dying and screaming out for just a neutral payment mechanism to transfer value fairly across the world now.
Yeah.
That we're just a global society. We really are in a global age, and our payment networks and systems just haven't caught up to the speed of commerce. We're all still on a horse and carriage. The world's now moving much faster than that, and we just haven't caught up until Bitcoin. It's now here.
Yep.
Why doesn't everybody just go to Bitcoin? Why would they go? Because they're just essentially just trying to maintain this last grasp of control, aren't they?
it's fear. They don't understand it. They don't, a lot of people still think Bitcoin's a scam. They don't know where it came from. They don't know that it had actual reasons to start from the day dot. They didn't just pull this thing together for no reason. It was a committed group of people with a moral backbone that's looked at the problems being caused by centralized control and issuance of all currencies and went, you know what? I think something outside of that would actually work. They pulled the technologies together, and it's never not been that. The people that get it see it for what it is. It is a worldwide movement to provide, a basic human right to be able to transfer a value that can't be manipulated, where people don't even understand that they've been manipulated this whole time. Our parents were stolen from, their parents were stolen from, our kids are about to get royally stolen from. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
But even, just the idea of a non-inflationary currency is heresy to most people because, this whole system is based on debt. And as soon as you move to a non-inflationary currency or a deflationary currency, all that debt becomes exponentially more expensive. So your debt stays the same, but all the goods and services become cheaper or cheaper.
Even without a hard money, that's happening.
Yeah.
Right? We're just try and look at this current system through the lens of Bitcoin and it'll click like a penny drop. Whereas if you're trying to measure this potential future from the current system, it doesn't make sense. I've got some very smart friends that are there going, no, you can't have a currency that you can't expand the monetary base of.
Yeah.
Like, you can just.
Yeah. It's people really wrestle with that one. They think that you need to have an expansionary flexible monetary system to expand it for growth, for population growth. But the opposite of that is that you just drive prices down to the cost of production. So it's a why would we want to go somewhere where we've got unlimited expansion and no ceiling on it? Apparently, that's all theatre, and therefore prices for consumers goes up all the time versus a system where prices go down to the marginal cost of production. So
Yes.
I need to read Stephanie Kelton's book because I got a theory that's where this idea is coming from. But they're proposing all this new theory to do with modern monetary ideologies, which is the essential idea that you can print your way out of any problem. they wrap it with all this technological jargon that makes it sound pretty, just like most fiat education. Whereas they've actually tried to redefine money, literally redefine money, to say that which you can trade with your government to pay services and taxes.
With your government.
As in literally saying that the government itself is the reason why money has any value whatsoever. Not because you're out there shining shoes or making pizza or, you know, putting up houses.
Trading value.
Right? Creating, like solving people's problems.
Yeah.
The only reason why you need money as a pleb is so that you can pay your taxes to the government.
Yeah.
That's what gives money value. And they're trying to hang off that.
Yeah. And if we just reframe inflation as a shadow tax, and if we just call it for what it is, a shadow tax that we don't see, but is the other way that governments get their revenue, and but we don't see it. We see it very, very, opaquely when we go to the supermarket and things are more expensive, but we don't really understand it, But that's what it is. That's how they get their revenue, by creating more, and therefore there's inflation. And the other way is tax.
Yep.
But most people don't get that other bit, that it's actually a shadow tax. That's what it is, and we need to reframe it like that so people grasp that concept.
I think a beautiful way to frame it, and super simply, is what's happening with the HEX debt at the moment. So the HEX debt, for international viewers, is a debt that uni students can acquire, and they don't have to pay it back until you earn a certain amount of money, or if you die, then the debt gets wiped. But hopefully that doesn't happen. But
It's a student loan.
a student loan, yeah, and so the government will index the debt that you've accrued. So a lot of degrees, let's just say it's $100,000 for like a 4-year degree or something like that. You've accrued over the 4 years, and normally they get indexed at 1 or 2%, aligned with CPI. And then we moved to last year and it was 3.5%, and this year it's like 7.8% or something. I don't know the effect.
They were arbitrarily using the value of the entire debt, not what was owing, not the balance. So the interest was getting paid on the entirety of the debt, regardless if you'd paid 75% of it.
You're kidding.
No, how arbitrary is that? We could just take more money. Yeah, go on, let's take more.
It's pretty whack. But the real funny part, or the bit that is illuminating, is that they're willing to index any debt at 7.8%, but they're not willing to help out your savings account. So if you have $100,000 in a savings account and they're like, oh, CPI is 7.8%, what we're going to do is we're going to keep you at the same level of monetary, so you can purchase the same amount of goods. But they don't do that.
No, which they could, because they're printing anyway.
They could,
right?
They could.
They and then that would be your savings.
That would be fair, so you keep your monetary, but it's not. And at that point, it's clearly a 7.8% tax on your savings or any money that you have.
Yeah. Yep. So there's no way out of this debt spiral. The US government is now paying 25% of its tax revenue just on interest alone.
So wild.
I mean,
new debt ceiling too. So on we go.
This is. I need to do more research to find this. All right, we've got every country in the world basically in greater debt than they've ever been before. They're all paying more interest than they've ever been before. To who?
But they just create bonds, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they've got to pay interest to someone. Who do they owe? Like, if they owe money to themselves, that's not a debt.
Yeah.
Well, that comes into question of the $1 trillion platinum coin or whatever it is that they could create for themselves and pay off their own debt. But it's not. It's private interest. It's banks and central banks and all that. So that's who it's owed to.
A lot of this does go back up to the BIS.
Yeah.
The biz.
So it's private interest, really.
We're going to handle that biz.
And it's only it cannot get any smaller. That debt can never be paid. It's insolvent, can never be paid back, because where does that money come from? There's no more. They have to create more to pay off that trillions of dollars.
And this is where you just
which
go
is
down
more
that
debt and more debt,
exponential.
and then it's a spiral. And so there's no way out in this system. So for me, it's going to come down to a CBDC is their way out of it. I mean, there's a soft way out of it, which is intense money printing, and it has to be intense. But no one's going to take that. No one's going to take that for too long. We look around, and that causes societal collapse.
Each time you go on a round of money printing, it has to be exponentially bigger than
larger.
the last.
Yeah.
So it's
orders of magnitude than last time.
As once the cat's out of the bag, it's very difficult to rein it back in. And Argentina's a long way in front. Japan's a little way in front. I think actually Australia's, not doing too bad in the grand scheme of things as far as debt to GDP is concerned, but we're well ahead on the CBDC front. So I'm not sure. Maybe we're like a test ground or something.
Yeah. So they're coming. CBDs are coming. Now let's close in on Australia. Where are we? We're in a pilot program here, aren't we?
Yeah. So we've got the government
EAUD.
Yeah, they've decided to call it EAUD. It's a CBDC, and it's in a trial mode at the moment. It's run by the RBA, which is the Reserve Bank of Australia, and they've decided to run it on Ethereum, which is comical, I think. I'm not sure what other blockchains maybe they could have used, because they're all currently being sued by the SEC, all of the big ones anyway.
Do you think that a CBDC needs to be on a blockchain? Do you think they could do a centralized? They don't. They could just do it. They could just do it on a server.
Well,
they?
yeah, it is centralized anyway. Like, it's not a decentralized thing. It is using a decentralized Ethereum blockchain, but it's quite a centralized thing because it's run by the Reserve Bank of Australia. Like, there's one entity who controls and mints, and they say it's backed 1-to-1 with Australian dollars. But no one's validating that. No one's verifying that. I'm sure that all of the back end stuff is not open source.
No, for more than a decade, it's these people that have been telling us there is nothing to see in Bitcoin. It's either a scam or it's something else. It's this or it's that. It definitely has no value, has no premise. But we're gonna use some type of distributed ledger technology to do all of our CBDCs. It's doublespeak completely.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me though is the currently Ethereum is not being sued by the SEC in America, but I think for all looking at the situation and what's happening, it's on the list for sure. It's run by the Ethereum Foundation. People are investing with expectation of profit. It's most likely a security. So what happens when, the Australian government has invested millions or who knows how much, hundreds of millions of dollars in this EAUD trial, and they're holding a bunch of ETH because you have to pay gas to do any transactions on this network. What happens when their government's holding illegal securities?
That's a very big question, and it's just every time I talk about CBDCs, it seems like they're just dead in the water. It really does. It's a big idea, and I think they would just love to be able to implement them. But every time you just hit these walls, and they're just going to be like dead in the water because they keep trying. Like, so where else what other countries, Laz, have started actually have jumped in?
If you want to give me the projection, who's running this one? I might need to go. No.
So all we know of is the E-Naira.
Yeah, where was E-Naira?
Was that
was Nigeria.
Nigeria. Yeah. Oh, that was an absolute fail.
That says it's been launched.
I shouldn't laugh because it's horrible for the population, but it's good to see tyrannical governments fall on their face.
Yeah, well, I mean, they had riots in the street. That's all right. I can just speak it. I'm looking at the CBDC tracker, which is at cbdctracker.org. Anyone can have a look. We've got, most of the globe is coloured with some state of research or deployment here. So you can break it down to what's under research, proof of concept, pilot, and launched. There's not a lot of launched out there. This one says that the E-Naira is launched, but the first one was the
what was the
sand dollar, the Bahamas sand dollar. That was cbdc.org, cbdctracker.org, sorry. But
so was the Bahamas the very first one?
This was the first one that actually went live, and it's pretty funny because you can't make this stuff up. You'll find a lot of official info at www.sanddollar.bs. Isn't that gold? That's hilarious.
That's like
not lost.
That's like the reptilians, creating Sam Bankman-Fried.
Yeah,
literally called him Bankman.
Much. Yeah. Or also Sam Altman, your WorldCoin AI aficionado.
Life's a trip.
Okay, so the red one is cancelled. That's that little one there that's cancelled. Peru, I don't know.
Hang on.
No, that's not Peru.
Ecuador cancelled it. Research is green, so there's a lot of green there.
Yeah, there's plenty of green going out there. Now, you can't really see the blue because it's right under Florida there.
We surely we should be yellow though. Surely our EAUD is in pilot. Maybe it's not officially in a pilot yet.
That's what we've had 2 successful payments from what I heard.
Well, ours is launched. So according to that, so it's past pilot and into launched.
Yeah. Well, no, it's pilot. It's a year-long research project.
Okay.
Is what it says on the CBDC tracker synopsis. But I had a bit of a dig into the Central Bank of the Bahamas situation. So it's basically been out since 2020. There's so much information on the problems that they've been having with it. Basically, problems with adoption that comes down to trust. They don't trust the government to manage it. People don't really understand why they need a new dollar. So, funnily enough, Bahamas has got a GDP of around about 14 billion, and in circulation as of I think it was May this year, you've got about a bit over 1 million sand dollars in circulation. So it's pretty minimal. But, because it's a top-down project, they can only think of one way to incite motivation, which is give out free money. Mm-hmm. So you've got a project where they're trying to pretend that this thing is pegged 1-to-1 to the Bahamian dollar, which is pegged itself to the US dollar. So you've got all these artificial exchange rates and lack of free information flow. Yet, are they actually deleting a real Bahamian dollar every time they create one of these sand dollars? You just got to trust that that's happening. Let's hope it is. But of course, to try and issue more inspiration into getting this BS sand dollar out there, they start giving money out, of course. So they've I've got a chart here which I'm looking at, which can show the distribution tracker, which is their initiative to try and get money out into the system. So we've got a $10,000 donation was given to the Rollville Exuma Homecoming and Regatta, right? So they get to pick which parts of society they want to give money to get this all happening. We've got an International Culture, Wine and Food Festival, okay? Bahamas National Trust Wine and Art Festival, Bahama National Trust Jollification. So we've got 17,000, 1,000, almost 20,000 going to the National Trust Jollification. So the Jollification was basically a massive street party where they, it was a big hoo-ha to sort of celebrate the release of this currency, as well as just the Bahamas getting through COVID and all of that. $20,000 was given out to people, and people that had this currency were able to skip the queue. So there's just public, a public party. You'd want to get into certain places to see a speech or to see an act or something. And anyone that hadn't jumped on this new gravy train yet just gets to wait. So they're already picking winners and losers. A little bit was given to the Salvation Army, a little bit to the Red Cross Ball, 10,000 given to the Red Cross Ball, right? But the fact that they can do this is the big red flag, right? Yeah. Money is supposed to flow where it's, where
the market should
where the market dictates, where the market's governing that the goods and service are in deservedness of it. Whereas they just come out and they give money to whoever they want. Now, John Roll, the head of the central bank in the Bahamas, was out doing a press conference in, it wasn't a press conference, it was actually part of the conference for the EAUD. So it's a Digital Europe was the name of this conference in 2022. And he's out there giving lessons for the CBDC. And he's basically just listing a whole bunch of problems that they had and how you can read through it and see that it's completely all centralized. The problems are coming from the centralization. And then he goes through and speaks about how he's going to make tweaks to the back end wallet. They're going to make tweaks to they're going to re-release certain parts of the coin. The centralization here, people, is what you really need to focus on, because you can go back through history. Every fiat currency through inception has been centralized, other than gold itself. And that was the only one that has actually given people a true source of their value. As soon as you try and store your value, your hard-earned work and labor in something that's given to you by a centralized authority, it will get printed over time behind your back. That's, do your monetary history. Yep.
It will get debased. And here he is out here saying that we're gonna come up with these new incentive schemes to give more money out to the system. They're choosing which bank gets to handle the wallet. Sorry. So they're already picking winners and losers in terms of who gets to actually interact with the general public with these things. And they've come out with tiers of wallets. So if you've got a certain amount of money, you can get tier 1. If you've got a little bit more money, you get tier 2. You get access to different systems. If you're a business, you get tier 3. You get, access credit up to $1 million and da 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 da. So there's so many reasons why this stuff should be raising raising alarm bells.
Yeah.
Now, I did have a quick look at this Digital Europe website. So Digital Europe was a conference that was put on. I don't know how many they've had so far. There was one in 2022, and it's supposedly an entity that's helping to create the issuance of a digital currency for Europe. So it'll be right up there with the WEF and their buddies. There was something that brought my attention. There's something here called Blockchain Skills for Europe by a company called Chase. Now, it's amazing to me that they can go through this much energy and pour actual capital. This is taxpayer money paying for all of these little government groups to come together and try and solve a bunch of problems that have already been solved. They're not doing their research. They're trying to bring this stuff so that they're still in control. That's really what it comes down to, is control of all of this stuff. The sand dollar is a perfect example.
Yeah, that's exactly what a CBDC is they want to be able to choose where money goes, and it's their ultimate goal. And we watched it with in Australia with all the COVID payments and all the job seeker, and how it was so difficult. And every time they want to, how to get that out, how to rush that to people, we do it through the job seeker and we give it to the businesses, and then it filters to the employees. And if everyone could have just downloaded the EAUD wallet, they could have easily given whoever they want the money. So they can, when they need to stimulate the economy, they're able to pour the money into the exact locations that it needs to go. And so for them, it's an ultimate goal for them, a CBDC. It really is.
Yep. The interesting part about the rhetoric behind the Australian EAUD is the Fed or the RBA here have said how they have concerns for banks and investors, and the way that introducing a CBDC will change the landscape. But then there's like a caveat down the bottom, which is, we will not introduce the CBDC to end users or people unless there is a greater public need. So it's like, there's just the absolute end clause where it's well, who's defining what is the need, and we could go to who knows what geopolitical situation drives that need for an EAUD, but it wouldn't be too hard.
No.
Now, what we've got here, I tried to find out how the actual technology for the sand dollar works, and completely shrouded in darkness. You won't find any details in terms of the actual tech behind it, except that it's done by a company called NZIA. Stands for Net Zero Issuance Alliance. It's a UN organized think tank. Basically, it's a whole bunch of insurance companies that got together. There was about 37 insurance companies globally that got together, pulled a bunch of so-called professionals in to try and get this technology actually over the line, and they did. But funnily enough, you keep looking and you find that the NZIA has basically just been falling apart since inception. So it came together just before 2020 to get this currency together for these guys, and since then, huge names have left. You've got AXA, Allianz, Score, a whole bunch of big European insurance companies are all just leaving this thing in a hurry because they don't want a part of it. Lloyd's of London left. Who else have we got? Routers, and a lot of them left because they were getting pressure from American lobbyists, and basically for they were worried about a whole bunch of legal problems coming through it. So this company was here to try and create a net zero, investable market in this currency, and they're already falling apart because of they're tripping over their own feet. They don't know what they're doing. Yet you can't find any information onto how they're actually running this sand dollar. It's a black box. This is the NZIA website.
Literally a black box.
Right? I'm trying to find it, and it
Please
says,
contact us.
send us an email.
And it's black.
And I bet you get a really quick response too when you email that. I bet you they're right. Really reply really quickly.
Yeah.
Send you over the white paper.
Yeah.
Here's how we're doing it.
Now, the Jamaica system is basically the same situation. Central Bank of Jamaica was the second currency to come online. They call it the JamDex. Same with the Bahama system. They've already admitted to hiring PR companies to try and get the public interested. So they're paying for marketing. Bitcoin has no marketing division other than people that see value in it and come out in their own time and do their own work to promote it, like us. We're not getting paid to do this. Whereas, if you've got a nonsense product that you're trying to jam down people's throat, you've got to hire a whole company and a whole bunch of PR marketing professionals to get it down people's throats. Now, you look at the Bank of Jamaica's website and it looks like you're about to buy a phone contract. They've got, fancy colors, fancy fonts, a big logo. But if you just click through the main sort of ads that they've put up on the very front page of the Bank of Jamaica website, where it's got about the JamDex, you can see from the 1st of April, let me go back to that, the government will pay you 2% back on JamDex purchases each month up to a maximum of 5,000. So they've got all these carrots and bells and whistles, and they're trying to dangle, a reward. The first 10,000 eligible small businesses to receive 5 payments in JamDex after blah, 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 will get a government one-off payment of 25,000. Just totally arbitrary figures. Now, are they actually deleting the Jamaican dollars every time they give this money out? Because if they're not doing that, they're going to devalue the pool.
Yeah.
And if they are doing that, that's taxpayer money that they're handing out. So they're picking winners and losers. Yeah. You do not want this kind of centralized control over the issuance of anyone's money. This is our money.
I think it is good to just point out, because I think there's some parallels which need to be clarified here between what's going on in Jamaica and what's going on in El Salvador. So El Salvador released, they moved to a Bitcoin standard, and what's the app called?
Chivo Wallet.
Chivo Wallet. So they and it could be said that there was a fair bit of marketing done to push that down people's throat. Like you could argue that, and they did give people $30 worth of Bitcoin.
Yes.
Upon downloading the wallet. And I think it's important to realize that the Bitcoin that they were using for that, I guess it is taxpayers' money at that point as well.
True.
But they aren't able to continuously print it, which is a different part. It's a one-off thing to try to get adoption, and the money that they've put aside, like the government has made a decision, this is better for the economy as a whole. If we transition to a Bitcoin standard, we need a certain amount of money to do this. So we'll allocate that to the distribution of and probably distribution, marketing, and development of the Chivo Wallet app. And now would have been budgeted for, and now that has to be paid back, and it's going to be paid back, and they're doing quite well. But it's I think it's important to delineate between the two, because you could probably get them mixed up.
Yeah, 100%. That's a very good point. And to speak to that, if these people do their P's and Q's properly, it's totally feasible that the JamDex is as legitimate as the original Jamaican dollar, so long as they're not printing that to infinitum, which most likely they will over time. Then there's nothing wrong with these digital currencies. They can be done one for one. They can be actually managed. But the history will say that the more power these people have at the control and issuance, the more corruption they have at their fingertips, the more they'll dip into that cookie jar. Every
single time through history. Every single time. You give someone the ability to hit the printer button, they're going to do it. The humans just can't resist it. They just can't. So let's just remove that ability. Let's just take that away and move to a trustless system.
Now, they have also said on the Jamdex website here that, of course, it's going to be secured by the Bank of Jamaica. And then right down the bottom, it says Jamdex in a digital wallet of another wallet provider or... sorry, it's not that one. There's one here that actually says that, under... Here it is. No, it actually says that they're going to keep it secure. Here it is. Your wallet provider will be obliged to share your information only if the relevant authorities require this information under court order. All right, so that's the back door. That's the elephant in the room with all of these technologies.
Yeah. So, why did you buy a burger last night, lads? You're not getting your allowance this week.
Yeah, you're down on your tofu
Too much
quota.
Oh man, too much control coming for all of us. And he who controls the money does control the world. And if this happens, I guess the big one to worry about is the Fed coin or something like that, the US dollar. Because the US dollar is a global reserve currency at the moment. Every other currency will die before the American. The American dollar will die as well at some point because they all die because they're based on debt and they get printed into oblivion. So, is the Fed? Is the American dollar? Where are they? Where's the US in this? They're in launched. So
No, they're in research.
Research, okay.
So, yeah, who knows? Who knows what happens there? Like it's a massive question. I think they luckily have a bunch of constitutional rights that we don't have here, and maybe you could argue that control of money is a break of the freedom of speech in some ways, potentially.
Yes.
And yeah, so who knows? I feel like they have the best chance of fighting it, probably out of anyone, because there's lots of very good lawyers, and you look at what's going on in Texas and everything. It seems like, and even Miami. Florida.
The states are starting to bifurcate, which is a great sign. You've got some states bestowing the right to something like a Bitcoin, or to even run mining, or to run your own software. There are states that are starting to legislate that. So it's going to be tricky for the Fed to try and pull out a coin that's one coin to rule them all. It'll be interesting to see how they go.
But it's the old case of everything's okay until it's not, and like Nigeria it's the perfect example of what happens. And the Bitcoin adoption wasn't exactly huge there for a long time, and then the e-naira came out, people started using cash, and then they limited withdrawals on ATMs so that people couldn't use cash and they had to use the e-naira, and then people moved to Bitcoin. And it was because you couldn't get Bitcoin into the country legally or through normal means, through local banks and things like that. The banks were blocking any transactions to exchanges, and the local rate of Bitcoin was 100% more than the international rate of Bitcoin. And I'm not sure what the adoption rate is there now, but it's I'm sure it's onwards and upwards.
Yeah, it seems like as soon as they introduce a digital currency, it's a giant advertisement for Bitcoin, for everyone to go, well, what's the differentiation between this one and that one? This one seems to be the freedom one, and this one seems to be controlled by the government. Does it make people just question it more and make people investigate Bitcoin more? That's what I believe. I believe it'll just really advertise Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, as soon as there's controls on your money, it's like, and this is what people don't realize about fractional reserve banking is it's like not your money. It's like some kind of IOU sitting numbers on a screen.
Yeah.
That is invested in some third world country somewhere.
Yeah, treasuries.
Like your money is not sitting in the bank. It is off, doing something somewhere.
We've seen that recently with the whole banking crisis in the States, where banks have actually failed, and two of the three largest banking failures in history have happened in the since our last episode. People don't kind of understand what's happening over there. You're actually loaning your money at a very low interest rate to them. They own that money now, and they are investing it in treasuries. Or whatever, long duration instruments that are failing, and therefore putting everybody's deposits at risk and the whole bank itself.
Yep.
So it isn't your money.
Yeah, and
You're loaning it to them.
you know, if you went and asked your grandma today, oh, where's your retirement money sitting? She'd be like, oh, it's in the bank.
Yeah, it's
You know,
safe.
it's in the bank and
Yeah.
it's safe, but that is so not the case.
No.
And when
Never was.
No.
yeah, and when this is exposed and when it's plain to see, and you know, this happened in Italy not long ago, or not a long time ago. I remember it was they had the cash withdrawal limits. Was it Italy or was it Greece? Maybe it was
Cyprus.
Greece.
Yeah.
Cyprus.
Cyprus.
It was one of those European countries.
It was Cyprus.
And they had the ATM, but Bitcoin kind of wasn't a thing then, you know. And then it was, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Widely
got a
available.
bid because of that.
Yeah, it got a big
Yeah.
adoption hit because of the Cyprus thing. I was watching that then at the time.
Only from people paying attention to sound money theory back then.
Yeah.
Which is a minority. It's still a minority.
And then, you know, a similar thing happens in Nigeria now, and I'm sure as we move down the debt spiral
Yeah.
collapse, each country will go through its
Yeah.
its little thing. So get Bitcoin now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Avoid
Well,
the pain.
Yeah.
It's, I've got a good example here that you can't really see it based on these on this map because the countries are too small. But you've got the
I can zoom in.
Eastern Caribbean Central Bank have created their own ECCB. They've created their own Dcash solution. Now, this is a currency that is actually accepted in the Bahamas as well. So
Yeah, I got
the
Grenada here with Dcash.
Right. So, you know, some of that money sometimes goes and gets spent in other nations. So if you're in Bahamas, you've got to decide whether or not you want to make your business available to the sand dollar and or the Dcash. And they're, you know, different. Some of the Bahamian dollars would probably make it over there. So normally they have their pegged exchange rates, their manipulated exchange rates. But here you've got a perfect example of two systems that aren't mutually, you know, compatible. They're exclusive of one another, and someone has to accept one to trade for the other, and there's always going to be that friction. And that's a good example for all of these central bank digital currencies, that they're going to get to choose which countries they want to do business with, which countries they don't. Every time they say no, that's just adding friction to international trade. It's not the most efficient system. So I think in the long run, it's going to be their downfall. But some of these, you know, you've got new currencies being issued worldwide. It could take decades for some of these things to truly, you know, for people to really see what their actual value is. Or if you're saying, what's it going to take for people to see? It is going to take pain. In a lot of these places, people are going to think, well, that country's going down, but my country's going okay. All these countries are suffering, but my country's going okay. They're literally not going to start looking until it hurts them at the bank. And they're going to start seeing it eventually. Some of these currencies might last 5 years. Some of them might last 15. We don't know. That a lot of that's going to depend on, you know, the political movements of these national international institutions. It's going to be pain. That's the problem, is that they're getting more power to manipulate and pull strings. That it's not going to fare well for each of these individual currencies, and who knows how long. You know, a country can still be profitable overall because their overall output is slightly more than what the government or what these organizations are extracting from the currencies. Just because you're going forward doesn't mean that they're doing a good job. You could be going forward at a much faster rate if you don't have this market interference, this inefficiency that takes a cut every time you transfer from one digital currency to another.
Yeah, and is it even possible to transfer between some, like...
Not without a middleman, no.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
because you're going from one world community to another.
Yeah,
And they have to allow it.
yeah, that's right. Someone's got to be in there, so there's
Yep.
got to be intermediary. Because if the EAUD is on Ethereum and operating on Ethereum, and then Australia wants to somehow then do, you know, some Australian company wants to then do some trade with...
Say Italy is on Stellar.
Yeah. Then what happens there? How do they, you know, do they want to buy? There's got to be intermediary to buy it and then exchange it over to the Stellar. So
Yeah, which creates an interesting like
Friction.
exchange rate issue as well, because you've got both sides trying to peg their currencies to their respective dollar, and then, you know, if it's a large transaction, that means that there's going to be an exchange rate fluctuation at the same time as like this pegging going on. It's
Yeah.
like, how do you manage that? It's a total layer of complexity that doesn't really need to be there.
absolutely doesn't need to be there.
It is
absolutely doesn't.
It is interesting that a lot of these pilots and launched projects are all in what would be classed like the global south. You know, these people don't have lawyers and strong constitutional rights and things like that. Seems like
They do have collapsing currencies.
yeah, seems like, you know, a bit of the old wool being pulled over the eyes of innocent citizens once again.
Yeah, I'm looking at a write-up for Cambodia's digital currency on the World Economic Forum's website. So they've got their tendrils in all of this. They're well and truly helping the European Central Bank.
Just read that title there, Laz. This is the
Which
best.
one? Cambodia's
Yeah.
digital currency can show other central banks the way.
Like Cambodia's this tech hub.
So what about the big nations? Russia, India, China. Where are they? Obviously
Bitcoin.
China. Yeah.
Yeah,
Looks
they're
like it.
already playing with it. I mean, most of them are in some stage of research, proof of concept, or pilot.
So there's the
Russia's-
e-yuan, isn't there, in China?
Yep.
And they've been trialing that for a while, haven't they? But they're again just giving it out to a small population.
Yeah.
Who are they giving it to?
And it's very separated from the yuan. You know, like is it even pegged? I'm not even sure it's pegged. I think it's quite separate. But it's I totally lost my train of thought.
They'd have to pretend that they're pegged, so they're probably pegging it for now. They were literally giving out wallets with money in it. You know, I heard stories of, you know, well over $1,000 per person. So they were dangling this carrot. You know, who wouldn't want freely printed money?
It is interesting. I just remembered. So, you know, the whole game theory around nation states adopting Bitcoin is that one nation cannot admit that they are mining Bitcoin or saving in Bitcoin or buying Bitcoin using fiat. Because as soon as one nation admits that, then it is an absolute race for everyone else to accumulate as much as possible before whatever fiat they're using is converted.
While getting out of that,
While getting
that
out.
currency.
It has to be happening, surely. If
Yeah,
you can
so-
create money out of nothing,
Yeah.
like you're just printing money, and then you can buy the hardest
they
money in
don't-
the world
They
ever.
don't need to buy it necessarily. Look at the States, for example. They're in a position now where they're just starting to pull their thumb out and go after some people that I would agree have been doing malicious things. I don't think regulators should be there to do that stuff. But if they're there, go after the crooks. Well, what's the point of having an SEC if you're not going to go after corrupt business that falls under their jurisdiction? They took a very long time, and now they're doing it in a very strange way, doing policy by enforcement. But why would you bother trying to buy cryptocurrency and announce that you're buying cryptocurrency, therefore admitting that there's something wrong with the US dollar, when you can acquire it through this, like what happened with Mt. Gox? They've been sitting on. No, that's the Japan people have got that. What they've had custody of Bitcoin for a long time. I think they got some of the Mt. Gox
I think they did.
coins.
Yeah.
But you know, if they've already put a ban saying that there's supposedly a freeze on American assets that are on Binance. So you know, who's to say they can't go in there with their same military might and try and get the digital currencies that way? They can acquire Bitcoin maliciously by taking miners out quietly, by doing their whole legal backdoor system. They can, that they can get large amounts of Bitcoin. I mean, who knows if they haven't been doing it the whole time.
Surely some countries are just quietly printing their own money and buying it. Surely.
Tibet or
That was Bhutan.
Bhutan, yeah.
Yeah.
Has been mining for the last 5 years or something, which is pretty awesome. But the interesting part is that the game theory of that is you don't tell anyone.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you look at this and they're clearly advertising what they're doing.
And Bhutan lost a lot, I believe. They lost some with what was the staking service that McCormick was using for a while? BlockFi. They lost money on BlockFi.
Yes, they did.
I think they lost money on FTX actually as well.
Yeah, that was how everyone found out that they were mining all this time, which is a bit
so instead of just doing the work and saving, they're like, okay, now how do I get
3%?
Yeah,
Yield, the great fiat word, yield.
But yeah, so it's interesting that no one, there's clearly not a game theory playing out here, because if any of these had any intrinsic value and say this e-naira, was launched, one would think that
Sky's the limit.
people would be rushing to
Yeah.
try to get this e-naira because it's going to be this
It
first.
just solves all their problems.
Yeah, but it doesn't, and because there's no hard cap, it's just literally, Nigeria will print to infinitum, and it has no real value. So, and then that delineates the difference between Bitcoin and these fiat CBDCs really clearly, is just the way that governments are going about it. One is like, let's try and acquire as much as possible without telling anyone.
Yeah.
And one is like, we should advertise this shiny thing over here and convince everyone it's a good idea. It's like read between the lines.
It just surely must be happening. There must be a whole bunch of smaller countries just quietly, acquiring as much as they can.
Yep.
With the money that they can print from their own central bank.
Yeah.
It's like,
and even large countries, like look at the hash rate distribution across the world, and when China banned Bitcoin mining, the hash rate dropped like 50% overnight, whatever it was pretty hectic, but it's now back to where it was, if not more. And I don't think that is consumers. I think that they flushed out the consumers, they flushed out the businesses, and now they're ramping using government hydropower and all sorts of other things.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Russia have seen a big move to mine, haven't they? We've seen a big move to actually setting up big mining farms over there, haven't we?
It's not surprising. They've got so much. They've got more resources than they can handle. They've got plenty of hydro. They've got gas to burn, especially
They sure do.
when they blew their own pipeline up.
Well, was it them, or was it someone else?
I'm pretty sure it was someone else.
Yeah,
Maybe the bully that threatened they were going to do something.
maybe.
Yeah.
Speculation.
Yep.
But this brings into question when are the markets going to price all energy in Bitcoin, seeing as it's really a form of digital energy. If you look at it, what it is, it's transforming energy into a currency or into a money, and therefore putting it on a digital network. It is digital energy. And it just makes so much sense that all energy will be priced. All oil, all natural gas will eventually be priced across the globe in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I do think that's a bit optimistic though.
It'll happen. It's going to take a long time before. I mean, people have to realize what this inefficiency is actually causing to them at the purse pocket, and it is complex by nature. So they're not going to see it straight away.
No, but they do necessarily see it because they don't. It's all been the US dollar because of the whole petrodollar thing. Because they made the US Army made the trade with made the deal with the Saudis that they would protect the oil fields in exchange for all oil that they sold being priced in US dollar, and also all profits buying US treasuries. So therefore giving the US dollar the big hegemony across the world. But we're seeing a massive de-dollarization. They're moving away from that. Saudi's actually starting looking at pricing things in different currencies, rubles and yuan, and so they're moving away from the US dollar. Everyone's looking for the something that is going to work.
That's what's guaranteed, is that capital is going to start doing these weird shifts. When they raise interest rates at the fastest rate in history, mind you, they're pulling strings and turning knobs and dials, while looking at indicators that are 12 to 18 months in lag. The effects of this is going to take a long time to come to pass, and we won't see where the inefficiencies are for potentially a long time. But I mean, I'm looking here at another CBDC tracker by the AtlanticCouncil.org, and what strikes me is that all these different countries are coming out with these attempts to try and test the waters for these centralized technologies. Yet the names they give it, like we've got Project Dunbar in Australia. It's just between Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, and South Africa. Project Sela is between Israel, Hong Kong, and the BIS. The BIS is all up in a whole bunch of these. They're all over it. You got Project Icebreaker between Israel, Norway, Sweden, and the Biz. You've got Project Mariana, Project Jura. So these are different countries. Project Rosaline, Project Aurum, Project Helvetica.
Sounds like it was all designed by one person.
So what are they? They're projects of all agreeing to accept a certain currency.
Yeah, they're research projects between certain central banks where they all get together, do a little circle jerk, and they agree to become a club at the cost of everyone outside the club. Like, why do you need a specific currency just between four nations that everybody else has to pay to get into?
Yeah.
You know, and they've got no idea who's pulling strings, or it's going to take so long for people to realize where the inefficiencies are in these systems. And it's just going to confuse and bamboozle people for longer and longer.
Which is the point.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to take all that long for people to really twig on these global international energy markets that, you know, the US dollar is no longer the king. It really isn't. They've just printed too much. We've just seen too much printing. They've just the devaluation, the debasement of that currency is now too big, and it cannot be stopped. So that's just going to continue. The next round is just going to be even bigger. You know, and we saw in 2008 it was, 800 billion or something. This last one was several trillion. The next one will be 20, 30 trillion or something. It's orders of magnitude bigger every time, and it's and getting closer and closer every time. So people have to look for something when they're settling these giant trades of energy, of oil and stuff. They have to find something that they can trust. And they can't trust the US dollar. You're not going to trust the yuan. You're not going to trust the Chinese government. You know, that big problem of what do you trust and who do you trust and which currency you're going to use is going to become really quickly evident, I think. And I just see it becoming really evident that it's going to fall to the only neutral thing that doesn't have any trust. It doesn't require.
The only neutral thing.
It's neutral and it doesn't require any trust, and it cannot be debased. So, and it's instant and final quickly, and all those things that we espouse for as Bitcoiners, of the benefits of it as a unit of currency, a unit of trade. I think it's going to be quicker than most people realise. I really see that happening quite quickly in the energy markets, purely because it is a form of digital energy, and I think that we're seeing that transition happen quite a lot, quite quickly, especially in the States where they're doing, where mining is really being embraced.
Yeah, I was just looking at this. I was curious about the Russian hash rate, increase over time, and I found this little chart, and it shows the US in blue down the bottom, and then China in sort of dark blue above that, which drops to theoretically zero in July and August of 2021, which I'm not sure if that's correct.
And then immediately bumped almost.
Yeah, bumps back. The cool part is Kazakhstan playing number 3.
Yeah.
Like nearly the same hash rate as China. And this is all, official data. Who knows what is actually going on. And then we've got Canada after Kazakhstan. Maybe, what are they like? 10%. And then Russia is after Canada, roughly 10%. So there hasn't been exactly a large push.
But that's only January 2022.
Yes, true.
So we're only it's only recently that we've heard about big mining facilities being implemented in China, in Russia.
Vladimir Putin is a smart man.
Go back to 2019.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible to think that China had that much in their borders. But even still, if the mining is decentralized within China's borders, it's not a threat. No, you can't go to that many doors and take control of that many mining institutions at once to actually be a threat to Bitcoin.
But they're probably there's a lot of people sitting on a lot of Bitcoin in China,
Potentially.
If you've been mining
all that for all that long. Yeah. Therefore difficult to stamp it out and ban it, because your population is so much owned by big business. You'd be in trouble.
Yeah, even if you closed all the exits and entries, there's still so much within the country that, you just create a little lightning network of...
Look, I want to be an optimist as well. I believe that countries will recognize it as being in their benefit, and I do believe as well that people will see this for what they need. But I think they need the jolt to realize how broken the current system is, and people know that something's not right, but they don't blame the money. They don't blame the money or where money comes from as being the source of a lot of the problems, a lot of the political problems, and the corruption that comes from politics. It comes through the mishandling of money.
Yep.
It's And we're still projecting forward. If everything stays as it is and just kind of half stuck together Band-Aid solution, then Bitcoin will just slowly gain market share and it will win. It's the black swans that they've got up their sleeve that we can't see coming. That's what I think is going to be the biggest threats to Bitcoin. Things like war. I mean, you've got other things like solar flares or meteors. Of course, they're going to be black swans that no one can predict. But
Societal black swans.
well, the stuff that they can actually do on purpose. You know, whether or not they can release another virus with extra gain of function, or whether or not they can expand the borders of this war. You know. America last week was there going, oh, China sent their warships so close to us while we're right off their coast. They're like, 12,000 Ks away. And
they put 4 B-52 bombers in Darwin, which is, quite close to China. It's in our backyard.
Literally in the China Strait that they're complaining that Chinese warships are coming too close to them. It's like you're nowhere near your borders and you're complaining that this other country is stepping on your toes. They're not trying to de-escalate military tensions worldwide. They never have.
No, because it's and especially in a financial situation, financial crisis, it's often the way out.
They need the crisis.
They need the crisis. They need to. It's one of the ways that they get out of a crisis is by going into war, which is, I believe, a big part of the reason of Ukraine.
And CBDCs, they can fund war if they pull the roof over people's eyes again and can print money without. Because it is going to take another decade for people to realize how much money has been printed.
Yep.
People are complaining that Bitcoin's not a hedge on inflation if, the monetary base was inflated and Bitcoin's been going down. Bitcoin has been doing amazingly considering all things. However, the full effects of the money that even has been printed is not yet realized. It can take 10 years for the money to filter down through all the investment systems that it gets to first when the people that get access to the monetary spigot get to invest it in financial assets that we don't even understand. We don't know how they work. That takes a long time to issue down. So when people say, they're coming out trying to say that inflation is transitory. Inflation's always transitory. It has to be. Nothing's going to be the same. Everything is transitory. But it's certainly less transitory than they were implying. And to say that, inflation is going to be really bad for a while and then it's going to come down doesn't bring prices back down. Yet they've consistently underestimated how bad inflation is going to be, and it's still not showing signs of coming down anytime soon. If we could hover at 6% for the next 10 years, that's a huge amount of value that's being robbed from people.
Yeah.
And, they can pretend that they're doing this and doing that to fix it, but if inflation is that hot, that is the money that has been printed still just coming out into effect. And that doesn't speak to how much money they're probably about to print to paper all over the gaps in their own ledgers as is.
Yeah, who knows what the next, because they're backing off the interest rate hikes now, and who knows what the next year looks like. Oh my God.
I know. Yeah, it's a little bit, it's so confusing right now. But what we do know is the debt spiral is here, and we do know that CBDCs are absolutely coming for us all.
Yep.
And we do know that Bitcoin fixes this.
Yep.
All of it.
Yep.
And also we do know that, looking at what's going on in the Caribbean, they will use the CBDC to, segment the population into different tiers, into different class structures. Who knows?
Different sectors.
This is not conspiracy
industries.
theory. It's actually happening right now. So
Because the yachties needed money.
yeah, I saw
right?
that the regatta.
Yep.
Come on, guys.
If anyone in the Bahamas needs money, it's those poor struggling yachties.
Yeah, with their J-class yacht.
So anything else we want to add to the CBDC deep dive?
Buy Bitcoin.
Get off Bitcoin.
Buy Bitcoin.
Get off zero. Yeah.
Don't be in a rush.
Self-custody.
Start with education. Reach out. It always starts with reaching out. Find Bitcoiners in your area. Find out how to do it safely. If you're in Australia, look for Bitcoin-only exchanges. We've just had some very crunchy legal times with 2, if not 3, of the biggest exchanges globally being in the targets of the American SEC. The Securities and Exchange Commission have sued Binance. They're suing Coinbase. Rumors are that Kraken's next. Get your money off exchanges if you have it. And if you haven't started yet, look for the Australian Bitcoin-only exchanges. Reach out. There is a Bitcoin community near you. You need to start learning how to do this, how to do it safely, because it's a pretty steep learning curve, but there are baby steps that you can take, even if it's, buy yourself $50 so that you feel like you have some exposure, and that will inspire you to begin your education process. Don't feel like you have to rush all into this at once.
Yeah, and it isn't that hard. It really isn't. I remember, in the 90s, we all struggled with starting an email account and sending an email. Now we all do it intuitively, so easily, and a million times more with Zoom calls and, all of that stuff. Writing down a dozen words or 24 words and using a small signing device isn't that difficult. There is a small learning curve, but it's not that hard.
Yeah, but starting now is what's important, because when you realize that you need this because you're starting to see half of these projects fail, it's going to be hard and very stressful to learn the things that you need to learn all in one hit. Yep. You want to start doing small transactions now, because the first transaction is always going to be scary. Send yourself $1, and if you mess that up, you're not going to be upset. Whereas if you're trying to get a large chunk of your savings into somewhere safe so that no one can take it from you, you don't want to be doing that as your very first transaction.
Yeah, good advice. Just start, get off zero, buy yourself a little bit. There's so many good resources out there, so much good info, YouTube videos, tutorials, all of it about how to do all of this, to buy your first bit and take it into custody, whether it's hot wallet and then ideally cold custody.
And also, I guess,
we're going to keep reiterating.
If you are asking for help, just be careful. There's a proliferation of scammers. There's quite a lot of, I guess, really, really good Bitcoiners in Australia and all over the world who are willing to help. But there's also people taking advantage of that, and be very careful when you're talking to people through Telegram or any apps that they are who they say they are, and they're not someone pretending to be someone else. And never expose your keys online.
Ever.
Put your guard up. If somebody's telling you to send you their money so that they can do it for you, that's not necessarily the way to go. Unless you actually know the person to trust them, and even then you can get rugged. It's what people should be telling you is how to do stuff yourself. Yep. And any true Bitcoiner will be doing it that way. They'll be showing you the way, showing you what's safe and what's not safe, but giving you the information so that you can take the steps to read.
They'll be just sending you money. They won't ever ask for money.
Yeah, that's right.
They'll be the first to send you some sats to the wallet that you just
to show you how it can work.
Yep.
Yeah.
And don't dabble in shitcoins.
Don't do it.
Because most of them
don't trust
unregistered securities.
Use a CBDC to solve your problems. Don't store your value in it. That's the wrap up for the CBDC argument.
Say that again.
Use a CBDC if it solves your problems. If going to whatever Service New South Wales is made marginally easier because you can skip a queue or pay less fees, maybe your rego is going to be half price if you pay, then do it. Whatever. Yeah. Don't store your value in it. That's it. Just use it for what you need to use it for, and then keep your value in hard assets. Bitcoin, maybe physical gold. Not financial advice.
Yeah.
Life advice.
None of this was financial advice.
It's moral advice.
My only financial advice is don't dabble in shitcoins.
Yeah, 100%.
Solid
CBDCs
advice.
Are in that anyway.
So hard to follow, though. It's hilarious how everyone fails at that.
Yeah, it's a learning curve, and when we'll keep reiterating it on the Goodship Bitcoin that we're Bitcoin only, and all the others fail somewhere, and it's the only thing that really matters. All the others are just tech companies. They're just tech companies, and you're just investing in them, and you're going to get rugged somewhere. 95% of them are scams. 5% of them might have good intentions. Yeah,
good intentions maybe. Yeah, it doesn't mean that they're going to come to a good place in the end.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I think they're probably 4%. It's probably, I don't know, maybe none. There might be one or two, but I don't think so. So it's just not worth it.
Would you play roulette if it was a 95-5 chance?
Totally not. Totally not. No. All right, seems like a good place to leave it for today.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's good to be up in the ship again.
Thanks, you, Laz.
Thanks to our diehard fans. Sorry it took so long.
Yeah, that's right.
The army out there.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get the next one out a bit quicker. All right.
Cool.
Stay safe. Self-custody.